The boardroom felt strained long before the heir arrived. Assistants avoided eye contact, directors whispered in corners, and the agenda folders were lined up like witnesses waiting for testimony. Everyone sensed tension building, yet they believed the moment would erupt into another verbal storm. They underestimated the value of silence. When the heir walked in, he carried himself as if the company belonged to him alone. He joked loudly, pulled out a chair with exaggerated confidence, and spoke as though the outcome of the meeting had already been secured. His laughter echoed across the table as he mocked a report I had prepared. People waited for a reaction. I gave them none. I closed my notebook and leaned back, creating an emptiness that forced him to keep talking. He mistook my stillness for defeat. He raised his voice to fill the space I refused to occupy. He listed credentials he never earned and investors he never met. Each sentence revealed more than he intended. Experience had taught me that arrogance is loud because it carries no weight. I let him speak until the room shifted. The directors no longer leaned toward him. They leaned away, observing how easily confidence turned into spectacle. While he rambled, I took in every detail. The trembling hand of the junior analyst, the tightening jaw of the finance chair, the quiet disappointment in the eyes of the founder's widow. These were signals more valuable than any argument. Silence allowed me to see what noise would have hidden. The heir believed authority was granted through volume. I knew it was earned through presence. When the meeting paused, he smirked at me with careless triumph. He thought he had won a battle he alone imagined. What he mistook for surrender was the moment I decided his inheritance would not survive me. He grew up in rooms where decisions were softened before they reached him. Every obstacle was handled by someone paid to protect his comfort. He believed this was normal life. When he stepped into leadership, he walked with the confidence of someone who had never been tested. What he called vision was simply the absence of consequences. I watched him speak about legacy without understanding what it required. He inherited wealth the way others inherit furniture. It meant something to him only because he had never lived without it. My path had been built one lesson at a time. I learned how to measure people by their patterns, not their promises. I learned how to read a room before speaking in it. Nothing came easily to me. I worked in departments no one noticed and sat in meetings where my name was forgotten. Yet every oversight became a quiet advantage. I had seen budgets rise and collapse. I had lived through mergers that reshaped entire industries. I understood timing because I had survived moments where a single misstep could end a career. Age teaches you to wait while others rush. When the heir toured the company floors, employees stepped aside politely. They saw a last name before they saw a leader. I saw something different. I saw a man who believed respect could be inherited. Real respect is earned through choices that withstand difficulty. He had never faced a setback that forced growth. He carried entitlement the way others carry experience, and he wore it like armor that had never been struck. As our paths crossed more often, the contrast sharpened. His confidence was loud. My awareness was quiet. His advantage came from birth. Mine came from years of watching, adjusting, and remembering. Some people inherit wealth. Others inherit wisdom. Only one lasts. The first real shift began quietly, long before the heir understood its meaning. It happened on an afternoon when he entered my office holding a folder he had never opened. He spoke about expansion plans and international partnerships with the excitement of someone presenting a winning lottery ticket. He placed the folder on my desk with casual confidence and asked for a summary. He assumed everything inside supported his ambitions. He never considered that the document might hold the one detail capable of reshaping the future he believed belonged to him. After he left, I opened the folder and reread a clause that had been ignored for years. It was part of a governance framework created by the founder during a period of rapid growth. The clause stated that any major decision required the approval of a senior steward who had completed more than 2 decades of continuous service. It was designed to protect the company from impulsive leadership. At the time of its creation, nobody imagined it would ever matter. The heir believed his authority was absolute. He never realized that the steward described in the clause was no longer a ceremonial figure. It was me. I did not rush to use it. I did not need to. Systems operate on their own timeline. Over the next weeks, he pushed forward proposals that seemed impressive but lacked stability. Each one required the signature he assumed I would provide. I watched him speak confidently in meetings, unaware that structure was quietly guiding the outcome. When he finally submitted his first formal request, he smiled as though approval was guaranteed. The directors exchanged subtle glances, aware that the process was about to change. He had inherited a title. I had inherited responsibility. The document he never read held the balance between both. Silence is simple only to those who understand it. The heir did not. After the first proposal stalled without my approval, he assumed it was an oversight. He sent a short message to remind me of the deadline. I replied by acknowledging the receipt and nothing more. The absence of confirmation unsettled him. By the second week, he called my office repeatedly, leaving questions that revealed more anxiety than authority. He wanted reassurance, yet I offered none. I remained steady, observing how quickly confidence collapses when it receives no echo. His behavior changed during meetings. He spoke faster, glanced toward me for validation, and shifted papers with restless hands. Each pause in conversation made him uncomfortable. He watched my expressions closely, searching for signs of agreement or resistance. I gave him neither. Silence became the boundary he could not cross. It forced him to confront the weight of his own decisions, something he had avoided his entire life. He mistook my restraint for challenge, which made him press harder. He began visiting departments unannounced, trying to gather support. Employees received him politely, yet their answers were careful. They sensed that something significant was unfolding. When he returned to his office, he found himself surrounded by uncertainty that no title could remove. He attempted to appear composed, yet his voice revealed strain during every conference call. My silence was not meant to punish. It was meant to reveal. Leadership is tested when admiration fades. Without the familiar applause, his posture weakened. He contacted investors, seeking affirmation. They responded cautiously, requesting clarity he could not provide. The more he pushed outward, the more evident his unease became. By the end of the month, he no longer entered a room with the same confident stride. Silence had become a presence he could not negotiate with. It had begun to work before he even understood it. The first sign of change did not arrive through confrontation. It arrived through a phone call that never reached him. The bank had scheduled a routine review concerning a line of credit tied to upcoming projects. For years, they contacted him directly, confident that his approval represented the direction of the company. This time, the call came to me. The assistant explained that the institution wanted clarification on recent activity, and they preferred to speak with the steward named in the governance clause. The heir was still listed as primary owner, yet the bank understood who held operational authority. I listened without interruption and scheduled a meeting for the following week. When the heir learned about the appointment, he brushed it off as a clerical shift. He waved his hand and asked me to handle the discussion before sending him a brief summary. His tone suggested the matter was beneath him. What he did not notice was the way the directors reacted when the news circulated. Their interest sharpened. Private conversations grew more frequent. People who once deferred to him instinctively began consulting me instead. During the meeting, the bankers reviewed projections and asked about the long-term vision of the firm. They wanted assurance that decisions would be guided by experience rather than impulsive ambition. I answered their questions calmly, outlining a path based on stability and measured growth. Their approval was immediate. When we concluded, they thanked me for my consistency and asked to schedule future updates through my office. The heir returned later that afternoon expecting a quick endorsement. Instead, he learned that the loan terms had been modified to reflect the leadership structure he never bothered to understand. His name remained on the documents, yet the influence behind them had shifted. Control had begun to relocate without ceremony, and the institution he trusted most had already adjusted to the change. The moment of clarity arrived for him slowly, almost reluctantly, as if his mind resisted the truth until it could no longer escape it. He entered my office one afternoon with the rigid posture of someone preparing for a confrontation, yet his eyes betrayed confusion rather than anger. Papers rested in his hand, covered with notes and highlights. He believed I had orchestrated a campaign against him. He believed every shift in influence, every redirection of authority, every new requirement was designed to punish him. He expected me to admit to a personal motive. Instead, I waited for him to speak. He began listing incidents, layering them with emotion, searching for a single moment that explained the change. I watched the frustration build as he realized he could not find one. The truth was simpler than he imagined. The system he inherited carried responsibilities he never learned to respect. When he dismissed expertise, the structure corrected him. When he ignored procedure, the process rebalanced itself. My silence had not attacked him. It had merely allowed the mechanisms that protected the company to operate without interference. I explained to him that leadership is not a possession. It is a trust. It does not bend for personality. It bends for competence. His failure was not ambition. His failure was the belief that entitlement could replace stewardship. The more he spoke, the more he understood that none of this was personal. It was alignment. The company was adjusting to the person who upheld its principles rather than the one who claimed its title. He sank into the chair across from me, holding the papers with a softer grip. For the first time, he understood he was not losing power to me. He was losing power to the very standards he had ignored. Detachment had done its work long before he recognized it. The decline did not arrive with a single dramatic moment. It arrived through small shifts that gathered weight over time. The heir noticed it first when a long-trusted advisor postponed a meeting with a polite message explaining that schedules had changed. He dismissed it as a minor inconvenience. A week later, a major partner requested that future updates be delivered through my office to ensure clarity. He laughed at the suggestion, claiming it was a temporary preference. Yet each request carried the same quiet intention. People no longer moved toward him. They moved around him. In public settings, he tried to recover authority by raising his voice and presenting grand plans with increasing urgency. The louder he became, the more distant the directors appeared. Their attention drifted away from his words and toward the stability they believed I offered. He tried to reclaim influence by calling private gatherings, yet attendance dwindled. Individuals who once sought his approval now waited for my guidance before committing to anything significant. The fortune he relied upon still existed, yet it no longer pulled people into his orbit. The board began reviewing old performance evaluations and financial reports with a level of scrutiny that had never been applied to him before. He sensed the change and attempted to confront it with confidence, but his posture lacked the certainty it once held. Each unanswered message, each postponed appointment, each redirected inquiry weakened the foundation he believed was permanent. His frustration grew into impatience, and impatience evolved into desperation. I remained steady. I attended meetings with calm precision, offered measured insight, and allowed the process to speak for itself. There was no need for force or confrontation. The system had already begun to withdraw its trust from him. The fortune he inherited had not vanished, yet its gravity had. Influence had shifted, and the erosion was irreversible. When the final transition came, it arrived with the same measured calm that had guided every step before it. There was no announcement and no public declaration. The board simply formalized what the structure had already revealed. Authority shifted from assumption to competence. The heir remained in the company, yet his presence no longer shaped decisions. He watched as the people who once sought his attention now moved with quiet confidence toward a different center of gravity. Silence had dismantled his influence, but it had also built something lasting in its place. It created a leadership rooted in clarity rather than noise. In the weeks that followed, I focused on restoring balance within the organization. Departments that had struggled under rushed directives found space to breathe again. Long-delayed initiatives regained direction. Meetings became purposeful. People who once hesitated to speak began offering thoughtful insight. The atmosphere changed in a way that could not be forced by volume. It settled like a steady wind carrying the weight of renewed trust. The heir avoided confrontation. He observed the transformation with an expression that revealed a growing understanding. This was not a victory taken from him through conflict. It was a consequence of stewardship returning to those prepared to uphold it. He saw that silence had not been a tactic. It had been a discipline. It had allowed truth to rise without interference. As the company regained its footing, I reflected on the journey that brought us there. Leadership is not about overpowering others. It is about creating conditions where stability outlives ego. The lesson was simple and yet rarely practiced. If you are listening later in life, remember this. The loudest people chase power. The quiet ones design it. Silence does not seek applause. It seeks alignment. And when alignment arrives, it leaves a legacy stronger than any claim to authority.